Most people spend their entire lives running away from the exact thing that has the power to transform them. We treat failure like a permanent stain on our character, a flashing neon sign telling the world and ourselves that we simply do not measure up. When things fall apart, our immediate instinct is to hide, to make excuses, or to pretend the stumble never happened at all. We internalize every setback as proof of our inadequacy, building an invisible cage out of our past mistakes. But what if everything you have been taught about falling short is completely upside down? What if the moments where you crashed and burned are not the end of your story, but the mandatory tuition you have to pay to get anywhere worth going? Think about the sheer exhaustion of trying to keep up an appearance of flawless competence every single day. The constant anxiety of double-checking your moves, the silent dread of making a wrong turn, and the heavy burden of guarding your ego against any possible scratch. It is an exhausting way to live, because shielding yourself from failure also shields you from growth. You stay in the shallow end of your potential, terrified of the deep water while convincing yourself that safety equals success. Yet deep down, beneath the polished surface, there is a nagging frustration. You know you are capable of more, but the fear of looking foolish keeps you shackled to the familiar and the mediocre. Years ago, I watched a master carpenter spend an entire week meticulously crafting a complex hardwood joint for a custom dining table. On the final cut of the final piece, the saw slipped just a fraction of an inch, splintering the grain beyond repair. In that moment of absolute frustration, instead of throwing a tantrum or abandoning the project, he simply set the ruined piece down, poured a cup of coffee, and smiled. He told me that the ruined wood was his favorite teacher in the entire workshop. He explained that a smooth, effortless build teaches you nothing about your materials, but a catastrophic mistake forces you to understand the exact grain, tension, and limits of the wood. He took that failure, studied where his hands had drifted, adjusted his technique, and built a masterpiece on the second attempt that was twice as strong as the first would have been. The first lesson worth embracing is that failure strips away the dangerous illusion of instant mastery. When things come easily to us at first, we develop a fragile sense of confidence built on luck rather than substance. A sudden collapse forces you to inspect the foundation of what you are building. It removes the guesswork and shows you precisely where your skills are thin, where your preparation was sloppy, and where your assumptions were entirely wrong. Without that painful reality check, you would keep marching forward on shaky ground, blissfully unaware of the disaster waiting further down the path. The second lesson is that failure acts as an irreplaceable filter for your true priorities. It is remarkably easy to chase goals simply because they look good on paper or because other people expect them of you. But when you hit a brick wall and experience a major setback, your perspective shifts instantly. The trivial worries dissolve and you are left staring at the core of what you actually care about. If you are willing to get back up and try again after a devastating loss, it means the pursuit genuinely matters to your soul. If you walk away easily, it reveals that you were chasing a status symbol rather than a calling. The third lesson centers on the quiet development of emotional endurance. Resilience is not something you are born with, nor is it something you can learn by reading motivational quotes in comfortable surroundings. It is a muscle that only grows when it is forced to bear heavy weight under adverse conditions. Every time a venture fails and you feel that sinking feeling in your chest, but you still wake up the next morning and put one foot in front of the other, you are rewiring your nervous system. You are teaching your brain a vital truth: that discomfort is survivable, disappointment is temporary, and your self-worth is not tied to a single outcome. The fourth lesson is about dismantling the paralyzing perfectionism that keeps so many brilliant ideas trapped in your head. We wait for the right moment, the right plan, and the guaranteed outcome before we dare to move. But life does not reward perfection, it rewards iteration and momentum. When you accept that your first attempt, your second attempt, and maybe even your fifth attempt will contain flaws and failures, the pressure instantly lifts. You stop trying to choreograph a masterpiece on the first try and instead allow yourself to become an active experimenter, learning as you go. The fifth lesson redefines what it means to gather true wisdom. Information can be borrowed from books, mentors, and podcasts, but true wisdom can only be earned through first-hand friction. You can study swimming technique for a decade, but until you jump in and swallow a mouthful of water, you do not truly understand the water. Mistakes provide the emotional scar tissue that transforms abstract knowledge into hard-earned insight. The sting of a bad decision ensures that you never make that exact same error twice, etching the lesson deep into your instincts. The sixth lesson requires you to look closely at the company you keep and the narratives you tell yourself. When you fail publicly or privately, the superficial crowd vanishes, leaving behind only the people who genuinely care about your growth rather than your victories. Furthermore, your internal monologue changes. You stop framing yourself as a helpless victim of circumstance and start seeing yourself as the active author of your recovery. You realize that your story is not defined by how many times you were knocked down, but by the stubborn grace with which you decided to stand back up. The seventh and ultimate lesson is that failure is not the opposite of success, but an essential part of it. Every monumental achievement in human history is built upon a towering graveyard of discarded drafts, failed experiments, and broken plans. The people we look up to are not the ones who never fell. They are simply the ones who refused to stay down when the ground gave way beneath them. They learned to dance with uncertainty, to view setbacks as valuable data, and to trust that every stumble was simply pointing them closer to where they were always meant to be. Whenever you find yourself standing in the wreckage of a failed project, a broken relationship, or a shattered plan, take a deep breath and resist the urge to judgment. Recognize that this moment is not a verdict on your future, but an invitation to rebuild smarter, stronger, and more authentically. The fear of failure loses its grip the moment you decide to look it in the eye and use its raw materials to construct something better. If this resonated with you, drop a comment below sharing a past failure that eventually taught you a valuable lesson. Make sure to subscribe if you are ready to stop fearing setbacks and start using them as fuel, and remember that your journey is still unfolding. Until next time, keep moving forward.